Sunday family gatherings at our estate were always a suffocating preview of a future I was actively being excluded from. I observed my father, George, lavish praise upon my older brother, Harrison, diligently preparing him to inherit our bespoke furniture company, then valued at an impressive $9.2 million. Despite having dedicated my life to the company since the age of 18, and possessing an intimate knowledge of every single production nuance, I felt utterly disregarded. My grandfather, Arthur Vance, the visionary who established the enterprise, silently presided over the spectacle from his customary place at the head of the long mahogany table. I couldn't have predicted that the upcoming events would fundamentally alter my reality. Where are you joining us from today? Be sure to let me know in the feedback section, hit the follow button, and stay tuned, because legacy businesses are often the deep wells where the greatest secrets are buried. I started working at Vance & Sons Bespoke Furnishings when I was 18, sweeping shavings after class and throughout the summer breaks. Now, at 41, I have committed more than half my lifetime to this craft. Our enterprise isn't merely another furniture manufacturer. My grandfather, Arthur Vance, forged this distinguished heritage from scratch 75 years ago, beginning in a cramped workshop crafting unique dining sets for local patrons. Today, we employ 72 master craftspeople and ship our premium-grade furnishings all across the continental nation. The rich aromas of fresh sawdust and linseed oil that permeate our workshop are my true definition of home. Every piece of heavy machinery, every species of lumber, every single finishing treatment is deeply ingrained in my identity. I climbed the ranks through every department, receiving direct mentorship from our most skilled artisans. By 28, I could construct our signature Regent armoire from raw materials, a feat my father never achieved. My brother, Harrison, is 44, 3 years my senior, and holds a master's degree in business administration from a highly exclusive institution. He favors bespoke suits for work and occupies an executive suite overlooking the factory floor, which he seldom descends to visit.
His comprehension of the furniture industry stems from detailed quarterly reports and complex margin analysis, not from the tactile reality of the craft. While I spent my weekends mastering the art of hand-carving intricate decorative scrollwork, Harrison was teeing off with Dad and his network of business contacts. Our father, George, took the reins from Grandpa Arthur 24 years ago. Under his direction, the firm certainly expanded significantly, yet something essential was lost along the way. The profound dedication to craftsmanship that Grandpa Arthur instilled was gradually supplanted by a rigid focus on streamlined efficiency and maximum profitability. Dad still mentions uncompromising quality in marketing materials, but his enthusiasm truly ignites when discussing third-quarter profits, not when inspecting a flawlessly executed dovetail joint. Grandpa Arthur is now 93 and semi-retired, though he maintains a small office at the factory and visits every Tuesday. His health has been noticeably deteriorating, but his intellect remains acutely sharp. He notices every detail, speaks sparingly, but observes intently. Despite stepping back from the daily operations, Grandpa retained control over certain critical company aspects, including key legal ownership documentation. My mother, Deborah, constantly attempts to maintain familial harmony. During our family gatherings, when Dad applauds Harrison's newest strategy to reduce overhead, she is quick to mention my indispensable technical contributions. However, the trajectory has been painfully clear since our youth. Harrison was groomed for executive leadership, while I was valued only for my technical skill, never deemed fit for the boardroom. The present conflict centered on a pivotal strategic decision. Dad and Harrison were pushing to move the bulk of our manufacturing to factories in a distant Asian nation. This proposal would retain a tiny local workshop exclusively for custom, high-margin pieces while mass-producing our standard inventory overseas at a fraction of the cost. When this proposal was first unveiled 7 months ago, it was a physical punch to the gut. I dedicated an entire weekend to scrutinizing the document, meticulously identifying every potential point where our signature quality would be compromised. The samples produced overseas failed to meet our established specifications. The joinery was mechanically pressed, not expertly hand-fitted. The wood finishes lacked the rich, layered depth our loyal clientele pay a premium for. Yet my deep-seated concerns were dismissed as mere resistance to essential change. Caroline, my fiancée, has been my steadfast support through this entire ordeal. We connected 4 years ago when she commissioned a specialized Regency-style dining table, and she genuinely grasps the depth of my commitment to this business. She supports my stand, though she often worries about the immense emotional toll the family friction is taking. I clearly remember being 10 years old, perched on a stool in Grandpa's workshop, learning the technique of sanding with the wood grain. He would gently place his large, worn hand over mine, meticulously guiding the motion. These are the moments that truly connected me to this heritage, not the cold balance sheets and profit-loss statements that Dad and Harrison are consumed by. The official announcement was delivered during our annual company meeting last April. The main conference room was packed wall to wall with all department heads and veteran staff.
Dad stood at the front, with Harrison positioned confidently at his side as he unveiled the leadership succession plan. I will never forget the exact words he used. As I strategically look ahead to the future of Vance & Sons Bespoke Furnishings, he began, I am immensely proud to announce that Harrison will be moving into the role of Chief Operating Officer, effective the 1st of next month. His proven business instinct and strategic outlook are precisely what this company requires to thrive in the complex contemporary marketplace. The courteous, subdued applause felt like a sharp physical pain in my chest. 23 years of tireless devotion, of mastering every single facet of our business, of cultivating strong relationships with employees and customers alike, and my name was not even mentioned as a contender. I forced my expression to remain neutral, acutely aware of the sympathetic glances from the long-serving production managers who relied on me daily. Immediately following the meeting, I asked Dad for a private conversation. In his executive office, surrounded by framed awards and vintage press clippings, I desperately sought to understand the rationale. "Dad, I need to discuss the announcement," I said. "I've been preparing myself to assume greater responsibility. I understand this business inside and out." He barely glanced up from his monitor. "Vance, you are invaluable exactly where you are. The floor staff respects you, but leadership demands more than just technical knowledge. Harrison has been preparing for this throughout his entire professional life." "His entire career has been 4 years in business school and 10 years in a corporate office," I countered. "I've been physically here for 23 years. Dad's face immediately hardened. "This decision is absolute. I require your support for your brother, not your attempts to undermine him." The subsequent weeks saw rapid-fire changes. Harrison began introducing new protocols without any consultation with the production teams. Essential quality control checks were drastically curtailed to save time. Materials were sourced from noticeably cheaper, unproven suppliers. The precise small details that had always set our furniture apart were now coldly categorized as inefficiencies. I watched Grandpa Arthur closely during his visits as these developments unfolded. His eyes would narrow perceptibly when Harrison explained how cutting the curing time for our specialized wood finishes would significantly boost output. Grandpa caught my eye across the workshop, but maintained his silence. Veteran employees began approaching me with serious concerns. Theodore, our head finisher, a man who had been with the company for 35 years, showed me how the new low-grade lacquer was already exhibiting hairline cracks after a mere week's work. Marisa, from the upholstery section, brought in samples of the new imported textiles that began to fray after minimal wear and tear testing. I meticulously documented every single instance and presented the evidence to Harrison. His reaction was entirely dismissive. These are just minor adjustments during a necessary transition phase. The average customer won't notice, and it substantially boosts our bottom line. When I pressed the issue further, he sharply reminded me of the established chain of command. Dad placed me in charge of all operations, Vance. Their job is to implement, not to question. The inevitable breaking point arrived when the Westbrook clients, a family who had been purchasing from us for 4 generations, canceled a large order after receiving a custom piece with obvious and unacceptable cosmetic flaws. I spent an entire grueling weekend in the shop, personally handcrafting a perfect replacement, guaranteeing it adhered to our timeless, traditional standards. The client was absolutely delighted, but neither Dad nor Harrison even acknowledged my decisive intervention. That night, Carolyn found me in our home workshop, diligently working on a small side table. Woodworking had become my solitary form of therapy. "Perhaps it's time to explore alternative paths," she suggested gently. "You could easily launch your own exclusive custom shop. Your exceptional talent is being squandered here." "This runs deeper than just furniture," I countered, tracing the beautiful grain of the cherry wood I was shaping. "It's about my grandfather's entire legacy, about the multiple families who have relied on this business for decades. I cannot simply abandon it." Later that same week, Grandpa Arthur sought me out in the prototype laboratory. He carefully examined the flawless replacement piece I had created for the Westbrooks. "Excellent work," he noted simply. Then he asked, "How do you genuinely feel about the new direction?" I hesitated, unwilling to voice criticism of my father and brother directly to him. "I have significant reservations about the quality control, Grandpa." Grandpa Arthur nodded slowly. Arthur Vance made a solemn pledge when he started this business: excellence without compromise. He added nothing more, simply patting my shoulder before departing. That same evening, Dad called an urgent management meeting, but pointedly failed to include me. I later discovered they had discussed rapidly accelerating the overseas transition timeline. My position was being systematically undermined, piece by piece, and the company I held so dear was rapidly morphing into something I scarcely recognized. The tension reached its critical mass at our Sunday gathering, now 5 months later. Mom had prepared her famous slow-cooked pot roast, a favorite of Grandpa's, hoping for a rare, peaceful family meal. Instead, the dinner table became the ultimate battleground for the company's future. Harrison arrived late, practically vibrating with excitement over his recent trip to Southeast Asia. Without preamble, he declared, "The contracts are signed and ready for finalization. We can transition 85% of production overseas within 7 months. We will retain only 18 employees here for high-end custom work and final quality checks." My fork clattered loudly onto my porcelain plate. 85%? That means 54 people will lose their livelihoods, people who have been with us for generations.
Dad nodded his approval at Harrison. "The severance packages will be generous and fair. This is simply the inevitable future, Vance. This is a direct betrayal of everything Grandpa established," I retorted, my voice involuntarily rising despite my efforts to stay composed. "Our entire reputation is built on superior American craftsmanship, on a tangible quality you can actually feel." Harrison rolled his eyes dismissively. "The modern market doesn't care about sentimentality, Vance. They demand affordable luxury. Our consumer testing definitively shows customers can't perceive the difference in blind comparisons. That's because your tests were specifically designed to conceal the differences, I insisted. I have witnessed the quality failure firsthand. The Westbrook order, the Jacobson side table, the Martin bedroom suite, all complaints from our most long-standing, valuable customers. Dad violently slammed his hand onto the table. Enough! Those were isolated, minor incidents during a major transitional phase. They are alarm bells, I shot back, and we are witfully ignoring them. The argument immediately escalated. Harrison provided excruciating detail on how overwhelming competitive pressures necessitated the change. I counter-argued with solid evidence of our commanding position in the premium market sector. Dad sided absolutely with Harrison at every turn. Either you fully support the plan or you find new employment, Vance, Dad finally roared. I will not tolerate this division within my company. Throughout the entire heated exchange, Grandpa Arthur remained completely silent, his eyes intently following our every movement. When he finally spoke, it was only to politely ask Mom to pass the salt, but I caught his significant, lingering glance. The next day at work, Dad and Harrison assembled all the employees to formally announce the overseas transition. I stood grimly at the back of the shop, watching the color drain from faces as loyal people realized their entire livelihoods were on the chopping block. Theodore, the finisher, 67 years old and highly unlikely to secure new skilled work, removed his spectacles to wipe his watering eyes. Marissa, from the upholstery section, tightly grasped her coworker's arm in silent, shared fear. My deep sense of personal betrayal intensified when I discovered Harrison had been secretly meeting with overseas manufacturers for well over a year. In his office after hours, I located confidential documentation detailing the full, alarming extent of the changes. Not only the move of manufacturing, but also the systematic substitution of cheaper materials across the board. The samples used in their testing program had been meticulously selected to mask the differences, while standard production would deploy even lower-grade components. When Harrison discovered me reviewing the papers, his carefully crafted facade shattered. "What in the world are you doing in my office?" "Learning the whole truth about what you intend to do to this company," I answered evenly, holding up the comparison charts. "This company is my legitimate birthright," he hissed. "Dad promised me this since we were children. You might have Grandpa wrapped around your finger with your precious dovetail joints and your hand-carved whatever, but Dad is the one who makes the decisions now." The pure venom in his voice was genuinely shocking. "This is not about who gets the company, Harrison. It's about preserving the unique qualities that make it special." "Save your speeches," he spat. "In 7 months, I will be effectively running every single thing, and your precious craftsmen will be training their replacements before they clean out their lockers." That night, I could not sleep a wink. Caroline found me at 4 a.m, staring at faded photographs of Grandpa and me in the original workshop. "You can't solve this immense problem alone," she murmured gently. "And I cannot allow the company to be destroyed," I whispered back. "Not the people who taught me everything I now know." I began methodically documenting every single flaw in the outsourcing plan, the quality issues, the customer grievances. If I could construct a compelling enough business case, perhaps I could still change Dad's unwavering mind. But with every passing day, the plans accelerated. Equipment was being inventoried for liquidation. Detailed training manuals were being generated for the overseas workforce. Then the unexpected call came from Grandpa Arthur. "Vance, come see me this Saturday. At my home, not the office." Grandpa's stately Georgian-style residence stood as it always had, a lasting monument to permanence in an ever-shifting world. When I arrived that Saturday morning, I was surprised to find him in his study rather than his smaller, usual workshop. "Sit down, Vance," he instructed, his voice more fragile than I recalled. Up close, I could see how drastically he had aged in recent months. The once strong hands that had skillfully shaped magnificent furniture pieces now trembled slightly as he poured our coffee.
"How serious is your health, truly?" I asked, a dreadful suspicion mounting within me. Grandpa offered a faint, tired smile. "Worse than anyone realizes. The specialist gives me, at most, 3 months. It's aggressive cancer. I have chosen to decline treatment." The shocking news hit me like a physical blow. "Dad knows?" "No one knows, except you now. But that's not the reason I asked you here." He slowly leaned forward. "I have been watching everything, Vance. The changes, the cost-cutting, the plans." I felt tears welling up. "I tried to stop it, Grandpa. I failed." "Do you know that when I first started this company, everyone told me I was a complete fool?" He mused. "Mass production was the future. Handcrafted furniture was supposedly a dying art. But I believed people would always place value on quality they could truly feel with their own hands, furniture designed to outlive them." He slowly rose and walked to the window. "Your father never truly grasped that concept. He viewed the business primarily as a vehicle for gaining social status and accumulating wealth. Harrison is the same, but even worse, because he has zero emotional connection to the craft itself." I started to formulate a response, but was immediately interrupted by the chime of the antique doorbell. Grandpa checked his pocket watch. "Right on schedule. Would you let him in?" I opened the front door to find an impeccably dressed elderly gentleman carrying a genuine leather briefcase. "Ah, you must be Vance," the man said, extending his hand. "Frederick Thompson. I have been your grandfather's principal attorney for 50 years. Confused, I led him back to the study. Grandpa greeted the lawyer warmly and gestured for us both to be seated. "What I am about to share with you is going to change absolutely everything," Grandpa stated. "When I stepped down as CEO 24 years ago, everyone, including your father, assumed I transferred complete, full ownership to him. That is not entirely accurate." Mr. Thompson carefully opened his briefcase and removed several documents. "Arthur legally retained the controlling interest in the company," the lawyer clarified. "Your father has indeed been operating as the chief executive officer, but the fundamental majority ownership has always remained with your grandfather." I struggled to fully process this monumental information. "Dad doesn't own the company?" "He owns 35%, Grandpa corrected. I strategically retained 55%. I always called it insurance, in case my core vision for the company was ever seriously threatened." Mr. Thompson presented Grandpa with a sealed manila envelope, which he then passed directly to me. "Inside are the fully executed legal documents officially transferring my controlling interest to you, Vance. The company is formally valued at $9.2 million. My share represents just over $5.06 million. My hands were shaking as I held the heavy envelope.
Why not tell Dad? Why didn't you stop the overseas plan yourself, Grandpa? Grandpa's steady eyes met mine. A man, especially a leader, must make his own pivotal decisions and stand firmly by his own principles. I established this company on a foundation of quality and community commitment, not just mere profit. If those core values genuinely matter to you, then you will inherently know the right course of action. "This is going to tear the family apart," I whispered, devastated. "Perhaps, or perhaps it will finally save what matters most." He placed his frail hand over mine. "Do not open this envelope until the board meeting on Wednesday. Think deeply and carefully about what you truly desire for the future of Vance and Sons Bespoke Furnishings." After Mr. Thompson departed, Grandpa and I spent hours talking about heritage, master craftsmanship, and the weight of responsibility. He recounted deeply personal stories I had never heard, about the early struggle, about almost going bankrupt rather than ever compromising on the quality of materials, about rejecting hugely profitable contracts that would have demanded cutting essential corners. "Whatever you ultimately decide, Vance, I trust you," were his final comforting words as I left, the envelope feeling impossibly heavy in my jacket pocket. The days that followed were unquestionably the most difficult of my adult life. I told absolutely no one, not even Caroline, about the envelope. I barely slept, agonizingly torn between my loyalty to my father and the sacred promise I felt I had made to my grandfather. Wednesday arrived far too soon. The boardroom was packed with senior executives, with Dad seated firmly at the head of the long table and Harrison placed right at his side. Grandpa Arthur sat quietly in the far corner, looking more frail than I had ever seen him. Dad nodded respectfully toward him, but kept his focus strictly on the meeting agenda. Harrison stood to present the final, minute details of the overseas manufacturing strategy, complete with impressive charts projecting astronomical cost savings. The pride on Dad's face was palpable as Harrison outlined the optimistic 5-year growth forecast. "With the board's final approval today, we can commence the transition immediately. By this time next year, Vance and Sons Bespoke Furnishings will be positioned as an undeniable luxury brand, but with mid-range production costs, granting us unprecedented profit margins." Dad rose, clutching the official authorization documents. "Before we cast our votes, I want to state how immensely proud I am of this bold plan, and particularly of Harrison for spearheading it. This truly represents the future of our company." My heart was pounding so violently I could barely hear my own thoughts. This was the precise moment. Once those papers were officially signed, 54 people would lose their secure livelihoods, and the bedrock quality that defined us would be compromised forever. "I have something I need to say." I heard myself speak, the sound unnaturally loud. The entire room fell into an absolute stunned silence, every eye turning to me in surprise.
With visibly shaking hands, I removed the sealed envelope from my jacket. Before any votes are formally taken, there is a crucial matter of ownership that legally requires clarification. I carefully opened the envelope and handed the official documents directly to Mr. Thompson, who had arrived just moments before the meeting. These papers transfer the controlling interest of Vance & Sons Bespoke Furnishings to Vance Barrett, effective immediately, the lawyer announced after quickly reviewing them. As the majority shareholder, Mr. Barrett now holds the final authority on all company decisions. The silence that followed was total, deafening. Harrison's face instantly drained of all color, beads of sweat forming rapidly on his forehead as the profound implications became instantly clear. Dad stared in utter disbelief with Grandpa Arthur, then wildly at the documents being rapidly passed around the table. "This is absolutely impossible," Dad finally sputtered. "I have managed this company for 24 years as the CEO." "You did so," Mr. Thompson clarified calmly, "but Arthur Vance legally retained the majority ownership. These signed transfer papers are fully legally binding. I have already formally filed them with the appropriate state authorities."
Dad's face instantly flushed crimson with pure fury. "You manipulative old man," he hissed directly at Grandpa. "You let me believe all this time." "I let you run the company your way, George," Grandpa replied with remarkable calm, "until you actively decided to dismantle everything it truly stands for." Harrison instantly jumped to his feet. "This is a betrayal, a conspiracy." I found my voice, now steady. "No, this is about preserving the legacy of master craftsmanship and community commitment that initially built this incredible company. The overseas plan is officially rejected, effective immediately." Dad slammed his fist onto the table with an echoing thud. "You can't do this, Vance!" "Actually," Mr. Thompson interjected, carefully reviewing another document, "he can. As the majority shareholder, Vance now also possesses the authority to appoint the chief executive officer and all board positions."
The meeting instantly dissolved into complete chaos. Dad and Harrison stormed out, followed by several of the loyal executives. Those who remained looked utterly shell-shocked, especially the production managers who had been fearing for their jobs in their retirement. Grandpa Arthur remained calmly seated, a faint, satisfied smile on his lips as he gave me a slow, meaningful nod across the room. The fallout was immediate and devastating. Mom called that same evening weeping, stating Dad had been raging uncontrollably for hours and was packing a suitcase to stay at a nearby hotel. Harrison had already contacted his own lawyer regarding contesting the transfer's legality. I was informed I was no longer welcome in the family home. Caroline held me tightly as I began to process the sheer magnitude of my actions. "You did exactly what you believed was morally right," she reassured me. "The real question now is, what do you do next?" The truth was, I hadn't planned beyond the immediate goal of stopping the catastrophic overseas transition. Now I'd suddenly owned a multi-million-dollar company, but one plagued by severe family fractures and lacking any clear, definite path forward. Late that same night, my phone quietly rang. It was Grandpa. "I know today was exceptionally difficult," he said, "but never forget why Vance & Sons Bespoke Furnishings has survived for 75 years while countless others failed. It was never just about the profit margins." "Dad and Harrison both despise me now," I stated quietly. "They are wounded and blindsided. Pride is a formidable force, but when all the dust finally settles, family always remains family." He paused, his voice softening. "You will inevitably make mistakes, Vance. Everyone does. But ensure you make them while staying absolutely true to the values that truly matter." That pivotal conversation gave me the necessary strength to face the challenges of the next day. I arrived at the factory early, immediately calling an all-hands employee meeting. Standing before 72 worried faces, I announced that the controversial overseas transition was officially canceled. All jobs were absolutely secure, and we would immediately refocus our entire operation on the superior craftsmanship that made our furniture genuinely special. The wave of relief in the room was palpable and overwhelming. Theodore, the finisher, actually wept openly. But I was also honest about the challenges ahead. We still need to urgently address the market pressures that led to the overseas plan in the first place, I admitted. I need every single one of your innovative ideas on how we can modernize and grow without ever compromising our quality. The subsequent weeks were arguably the hardest of my entire professional career. Dad and Harrison outright refused to speak to me. Several key executives resigned immediately. I worked punishing 16-hour days, rapidly learning aspects of the business I had never personally managed before.
everything from complex banking relationships to aggressive new marketing strategy. But slowly, gradually, things began to definitively turn around. We initiated a bold transparency campaign, inviting potential customers to tour our workshop and witness precisely how their furniture was created. We developed an innovative hybrid production model that kept all manufacturing firmly in America, but strategically incorporated some advanced automation for consistency in our larger pieces. We significantly expanded our apprenticeship program, actively recruiting young, dedicated craftspeople eager to master the traditional, time-honored methods. Exactly 2 months after the tumultuous board meeting, Harrison surprisingly appeared in my office doorway. He looked distinctly uncomfortable, but clearly determined. "I still fundamentally believe you and Grandpa orchestrated this behind our backs," he began stiffly. "But I've been reflecting deeply on my own role here. I do possess skills the company genuinely requires, just not as the operations leader." We talked for over 3 hours, truly listening to each other perhaps for the first time in our lives. Harrison finally admitted he had never truly loved furniture making, but he undeniably excelled at complex financial strategy. By the end of our candid conversation, we had formally outlined a brand new position for him, Chief Financial Officer, CFO, focusing on the areas where his advanced MBA knowledge truly added significant, measurable value.
Dad took much longer to reconcile. 4 months passed before he would even take my calls. Grandpa arranged a private dinner at a carefully chosen neutral restaurant, where we managed to have civil conversation focused mostly around Mom's vast new garden. But when our first quarter results showed a promising 6% increase in sales, despite successfully maintaining our production standards, his resistance began to visibly thaw. "Your marketing campaign focused on American craftsmanship is clearly generating results," he admitted grudgingly during a chance encounter at Grandpa's house. It was not forgiveness, but it was certainly a promising start. Meanwhile, Grandpa Arthur visited the factory every week despite his advancing illness, watching with quiet satisfaction as we fully returned to the founding principles he had established. He even began recording his vast knowledge, creating an essential video archive of specialized techniques and wisdom for future generations. The true moment of healing came entirely unexpectedly 9 months later. A major national furniture retailer approached us for a prestigious high-volume contract, deeply impressed by our renewed public commitment to quality. In the critical meeting, I found myself briefly struggling to accurately address some exceptionally complex financial forecasting questions. "May I?" Harrison quickly interjected, stepping forward with detailed, prepared projections he had meticulously worked on. His presentation was absolutely flawless, immediately securing the massive deal on highly favorable terms. Afterward, Dad pulled us both gently aside. "Your grandfather would be immensely proud of how you two are working together today," he said, his voice thick with uncharacteristic emotion. It was the closest he had ever come to an acceptance of the new, difficult reality.
Caroline and I were married that fall, with my entire family present. The underlying tensions remained, and the relationships were forever changed. But we were successfully finding a new, stable equilibrium. And when our first child was born the following May, it was Dad who brought the antique family cradle, which he had meticulously restored himself by hand. 18 months after assuming ownership, Vance & Sons Bespoke Furnishings was stronger than it had ever been. We had expanded our dedicated workforce to 78 craftspeople, opened a thriving training academy for traditional woodworking, and successfully launched a successful mid-priced line that maintained our core quality while appealing to an entirely new demographic of customers. Most precious of all, Grandpa Arthur lived long enough to witness it all. Though physically weakened by his illness, his eyes shone with immense pride during his weekly visits. In his final days, he summoned me to his bedside. "You have honored the legacy," he whispered, his hand gently resting on mine. "But you have also bravely made it your own. That, Vance, is the true meaning of succession." He passed peacefully the next day, leaving behind not just a successful business, but a profound philosophy that cherished quality, community, and integrity above absolutely all else.
A deep, earnest, and slightly gravelly male voice, speaking with a standard American accent. The tone is highly reflective and passionate, conveying a blend of deep commitment to his family's craft and simmering resentment over feeling overlooked. Pacing is measured, becoming urgent only during high-tension dialogues. Sound like a dedicated, authentic storyteller. At his subsequent memorial service, our entire company stood together, including both Dad and Harrison. We were different men now, tempered by our conflict, but ultimately stronger for having faced it. That was 6 years ago. Today, I still walk the production floor daily, knowing every employee by name. I still work with my own hands whenever time permits, keeping my vital connection to the craft alive. And my son, now 5, already has his own small workbench where he learns the satisfying feel of wood grain under patient, gentle fingers. Some might question whether the severe family conflict was worth the $9.2 million company, but I know with absolute certainty it was never about the money. It was about preserving something authentic and deeply meaningful in a world increasingly satisfied with cheap shortcuts and poor approximations. What would you have done if you were in my shoes? Would you have dared to open that envelope? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. If this story deeply resonated with you, please like, follow, and share it with someone who might be navigating tough choices in their own family business. Remember, the true, lasting legacy is not measured in dollars and cents, but in the unwavering values we choose to uphold. Thank you for reading, and may you find the courage to stand for what matters most in your own life.